It's not often that I meet people who choose to stand out by wearing period clothing, but it's the thing that made Job stand out to me on the light rail platform one morning in Seattle. Job takes his Jewish faith tradition seriously, and tradition seemed to be the primary driving factor in his belief that we should do charity. My name is Nick, and this is Conversations on the Coast. Since it looks like our train is delayed, are you interested in recording an interview while we wait for the train?
What for?
So I do a podcast called Conversations on the Coast, and it's about exploring people's epistemology, or the reasons that they use to figure out what's true. So what we do is we talk about something you believe, and then we kind of work together to kind of unpack the reasons and justifications you use to support your belief.
Sure.
Cool. What brings you to the train this morning?
I am a UW student, so I'm going to the U district for classes.
Awesome. And I notice you are dressed up today.
I dress up almost every day. It's something I enjoy doing.
Awesome. That's cool. Is this what underlies this?
My mother has some training as a seamstress, so when I was younger, she would always help me make costumes, and now it's just evolved into me enjoying dressing up, and I do it a lot and get commented almost every time about.
That's amazing.
About the outfits.
That's great. So it probably helps you to be a little bit more outgoing and you know.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
I've definitely made a couple friends because people see the guy over there in the crazy outfit and they want to talk to me.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, my name is Nick, by the way.
Pleasure.
What's your name?
Job.
Job.
Yes.
All right. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you as well on this delayed train morning.
Yeah, I know. So
I imagine it was the storm last night.
Yeah, so I got here. I actually usually take the train about 6 a.m., and I got here and the train was delayed until 7, so I headed home and took a few meetings over Zoom, and now I'm trying to get to work, and depending on how long the train is delayed, I might miss a few more meetings, so it's quite an interesting day.
Fun.
Cool. So, so let's figure out what we should talk about. What is something that you believe that you think other people should also believe?
That's a good question. What is something I believe that I think other people should believe?
One line to Linwood City Center at North.
It might be interesting to think about things that affect how you behave in the world, how you treat other people.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is, the biggest effector of how I behave is I'm Jewish.
Okay.
But I don't want everyone else to be Jewish because I want that to be everyone's choice.
Okay.
A choice of what religion they follow and who they worship and all that.
Would you say that your Judaism involves things that you believe to be true, or would you say it more believes it involves things that you think people should do? So is it more like of a truth belief or more of a values thing?
There's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Judaism itself has a lot of very interesting points in how it relates to science and discussion of things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone should be open to discussing their beliefs, and that it's always a good thing to talk about what you believe in.
Awesome. You're a perfect person for me to talk to.
Yes. I mean, most Jews will be, given that we've got a long history of talking about our opinions.
Awesome.
And sometimes I don't see a lot of people being open to discussion about belief, and I think, well, that could be something that I think it's.
Sure.
I think everyone should be more open to discussion about what they believe. This discussion exactly what we're having right now, that they believe in and what they find important.
Okay, so thinking about that belief. Oh, first of all, I just want to clarify the spelling of your name. Is it J-O-B?
Yes.
Like the biblical Job.
Yes, as in the biblical Job.
Awesome. So when I talk to people about value type beliefs, one of the things I like to do is place it on a scale. So if you think about a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 is just, it's just fun for me to think about, and 100 is, this is a moral duty that everyone must do or they're morally bankrupt. Where would you be on that scale from 0 to 100? And you can think of 50% as being like, this is a moral virtue, but it's not something that people must do.
I'd probably put it on 50.
Okay.
I don't. I am not a big believer in there's a couple things that everyone should do, but it's I don't personally think that anyone's got like obligations to other people to do those things. It's only like the only things that they're obligated to do are things that won't hurt other people. You're not allowed to hurt other people, but otherwise I'm not going to obligate anyone to do something that's only going to affect them.
Okay.
Like that should be a personal choice.
So can you give me an example of something that you see as closer to a moral duty?
Probably giving charity if you have the means to. And that's very big if you have the means to. I think that if you have the ability to help other people, that you should. It's like, obviously put yourself first, make sure you are taken care of and that you're not going to starve. Like, don't give your last $5 to someone on the street. But if you have the means to, and it's not going to affect you negatively, then it's literally costing you nothing. Just do it.
Awesome. So would you rather talk about the charity belief or the talking about belief?
The charity belief, since it seems a little less meta.
Okay, cool. So why is it important to you for people to give to charity?
It starts off with, again, back to my Judaism, because we are, in Judaism, there's a concept of tzedakah, or charity. It's also the root word for tzaddik, which is the word for a righteous person. So a righteous person is someone who gives a lot of charity.
Okay.
And so that's probably where it's probably where it started, is with that belief, because I always gave 10% of my allowance to tzedakah, and we would always every year collect all of it and decide on a charity that we were going to donate our money to. So,
cool. And we could keep talking on the train. That's fine. I do this all the time.
So that's probably where it started. But as I have gotten older and I see how somewhat terrible our world is at the moment, I just think that since everything is not the best, we should do our best to try and make it just a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay.
If we can, and it's not going to make our world worse.
So if you were going to make a pie chart, where one of the reasons on the pie chart is tzedakah and the traditions that came from the Torah, and the other part of the pie chart is kind of what you see in the world. Like how would those compare? What is the percentage of those that contribute to your belief?
It's probably 60% what I've gotten from the Torah and what I've learned from there, because that shapes a lot of how I believe people should do it, because that's where I get the idea of only do it if you can. Don't go beyond your means to try and support someone else. Only do what you can while supporting yourself.
Okay.
And then the other 40% is this growing recognition of the world, and that it's just the right thing to do to help someone out if you can.
Okay. So if looking at the Torah and the tzedakah and that tradition, why is that tradition or what's written in the Torah a good reason to support this belief?
It's the idea of it being a tradition means that if everyone who follows that tradition does it, then it's going to be better than if just one person does it as a belief for them. So it works better as a tradition.
This way?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
It's less of a...
2, Glenwood City Center.
It's less of a... I think it works better as a tradition because a tradition means that it's taught to people and that it's something that is explored and worked on, and people have the ability to debate it and to look at it, and it's more open than it's just a personally held belief.
Okay, so let me rephrase that to make sure I get this right. So you're saying that because we've had a lot of time behind it and people haven't had the time to compare beliefs and debate, that this maybe weeds out bad ideas?
Yes, and also it's more open to people because it's not like just something that I have. It's something you can go out and look up on the internet or search out that in a way that just makes it more accessible, so it's easier to learn about and to also find like support systems or ways that you can do it. Like if I just said that I really liked charities, then I mean, that doesn't help you if you want to donate to charity. But if I say, oh, Judaism has this long tradition of tzedakah, then you can go out and look up and you'll find websites, Jewish websites that like link to a bunch of different charities that all do different things that you can support. So it's just a bigger network of it. And I think that's better because it makes it more easily accessible.
Okay. Is it possible for something to have a long tradition and not be right or not be true?
Yes. Very much so.
So why is this tradition, right, a good reason to believe that it's true and to follow that value?
How do I phrase what's in my brain?
Always the challenge, isn't it?
Yes. The use of language, frail language to communicate thoughts that are big and difficult. For traditions, especially, I think that's where it's good to debate it comes in, because that way that, like, the reason that I believe that this tradition is a good one and it's a good one to follow is that I was taught it not as this is something you must do, but here's a thing we are going to do, and here's why we're doing it.
Okay.
And so it gives, like, traditions that are either silent or, like, mostly unacknowledged or stuff like that are like it's different to something because it's not ever getting twisted around. It's something that I have had a chance to talk through, and I think that's when you start following a tradition, is after you've had a chance to examine it and talk through it. You don't just follow it because it's tradition.
Okay.
So that's why I think this tradition is a good one, because I've had a chance to examine it and talk through it and understand it.
Yeah.
But other traditions I don't understand, and so I don't do those ones because it's just something that doesn't sit with me, that I haven't had that I don't understand the meaning behind it.
Right.
And so I think that's when. So I do think it being a tradition comes with some caveats, but I think that would be the that's why I think this tradition specifically is a good one.
Okay. So let me present something that is like Plato wrote about, right? And I don't know if you've heard of the Euthyphro dilemma. It's not directly analogous, but it's sort of analogous. And it asks a question that in this case we would apply to say, is what's in the Tanakh, is it true because it's tradition, or is it tradition because it's true?
I would say that it's probably both. Because I don't think anything is a monolith. So
yeah.
But there are some parts in it that we only still do because it's tradition, and there are some parts of it that we do because, or at least my personal belief, that it's because it's true. It's the true thing. And I mean, we're told the Torah itself is the emes, the truth of God's word.
Yeah.
However, then there are rabbis who literally tell God to stay out of their arguments, and that they're going to do whatever they want with the Torah, and He gave it to us. So it's for us now, and I believe there are parts of it that were given to the people at the time because it was what was the socially accepted thing at the time, not because it was true, because... and that specifically is animal sacrifice is my main example of this, because Judaism has a lot in it about preventing animal cruelty. Like, all of keeping kosher is a lot of making sure that the animals you eat are treated in humane ways and all of this. And then suddenly we turn around and we have this massive tradition of animal sacrifice. And so to me that feels like something that was added in because that was what was tradition at the time. That's how you show honor to your God. And so that part's not necessarily true and only became true because it was a tradition, and now we've moved past that.
Okay.
But there are other parts like this tzedakah, or specifically that we don't proselytize, we don't go out and seek out new members of our religion. Those things, I think, are tradition because they are true.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's not the book or the tradition that makes them true. It's just that records things that people have discovered that are true, and maybe there's a deeper truth behind them.
Yes.
Behind that. Okay. So when you look at charity, then what do you think is the real reason why that's a good thing to do? Like you mentioned, there's that 40%. That was things that you've seen.
Yes. The real reason I think that's true relates to another Jewish concept, which is the concept of tikkun olam, which is repairing the world.
Okay.
And that is that each person is in essentia a world unto themselves, and if you help someone, and if you reach out and you try to help someone, or you make someone's life better, then you are in a sense saving the world or repairing the world, which is where tikkun olam comes from. And so that's, I think, the deeper truth behind tzedakah. It's this desire to save the world of a person. It's the truth that other people also matter, and that other people also have lives, and their lives get difficult just like your life does. And so when you're in a good spot, you should help them out.
Okay.
And if everyone believed that truth, and if you were in a bad spot, other people would help you out. But that's not as accepted in our world at the moment. But that's, I think, the deeper truth behind it.
Okay. So it sounds like there's an idea behind people supporting each other.
Yes.
That maybe if you support other people, that also maybe supports you.
Yes.
Okay. Why is that a good reason to do things?
That
to Glenwood City Center.
I mean, that's a little bit less of my reasoning for it. I like to do it just, a lot of it because I was taught to do it, and it feels good now. But I think that'd be a good reason to do it because there are some people who have difficulty grasping these ideas, and there are some people with mental health illnesses that makes it harder for them to be aware of other people.
Sure.
And so for this, it gives them a little bit of a incentive to do it, and even if you're given an incentive to do a good thing, it's still a good thing that you did, regardless of whether or not you were given an incentive for it. So
right.
I think that specifically works as a good way to justify it to people who might not otherwise do it, or to make it make sense to people that otherwise wouldn't understand why.
Okay. So I like what you said about how there's deeper reasons for this, right? This really does maybe help the world. It helps you.
Yeah.
It helps our society. Those are good. I'm thinking about what you said about how when you codify these things in a book, that then maybe encourages people who might not have that innate sense of goodness. Is it possible for something to be written in a book to say that you should do and not be right?
Yes, very easily.
Okay.
Written words are just the thoughts of a person, and people can have, I won't say incorrect, but people can have thoughts that are not productive or supportive to their community or society.
Yeah. How can we tell, or how can any given person tell, whether something that's written in a book, whether the Torah or some self-help book or somewhere on the internet, whether something written in a book is more likely true or more likely false? How can we evaluate that? Is this your stop?
No, I'm standing right in front of the door, and it's going to open, so just thoughts of making sure that we're staying out of the way.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do that without, the culture, because, with, again, back to the discussion thing, is, I've been encouraged to discuss and talk about it, and that helps me weed out what's true and what's not, and sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah.
So I would say that at the very start, there's a very simple questionnaire. Does it hurt someone else? If whatever this is proposing would hurt someone else, then it's more likely not true.
Okay.
Of course, that has its own slight caveats to it, but
yeah.
And then if it's about something that's personal, for that it's just try different things. Try as many things as possible, and just find whatever feels right to you. Then that's what your truth is. Truth is going to look slightly different to different people. So it's just a lot of finding whatever that's going to look like for you.
Okay. Why is feeling good about something a good reason to believe something is true?
For things like a religion or beliefs like that, it's because of the fact that if you find something that you feel good with doing, if you find a religion that you enjoy the practices of, and that you're gonna, it's something that you're not gonna be like, it's not gonna hurt you. It's a good that searching out that is a good reason because, searching for that is good because of the fact that when you want to do something because it makes you feel good, then you're much more likely to actually do that. It's not like you're forcing yourself into religion because they claim it's the right one or that this is the only path to X or Y or Z. Yeah. But if you're doing it because you like it, because you enjoy it, because you feel good, you're going to engage more in those in those beliefs or those philosophies or those ideologies. And then from there, that gives you more of an in with the community because you enjoy it, you're having fun with it, and it makes you feel good. So it's easier to talk to the other people who are the same way as you,
right?
And it helps build a community with like that set of beliefs. And shocker of shockers, the Jewish guy likes community.
Is it possible to feel good about something? Right, something makes you feel good. You find a community of people who that thing makes them feel good, and for it still not to be right.
Yes. Okay. Very easily. And that's mostly where you come back to the questionnaire, does it hurt another person?
Yeah.
If yes, then you shouldn't do it.
Okay. So should that feeling good be a good reason to be at high confidence that something is right or true?
That feeling good is high confidence to try something and find out if you like it.
Okay.
Or find out if it's truth, or find out if it's actually good, because that enjoyment of it means you're going to want to understand it more.
Yeah.
And that understanding brings knowledge of whether it's good or bad.
Okay.
And so that's what I
So how does that understanding tell you whether something is true or not?
Because the more you understand it, the more you are able to look at it and see its flaws. And to see something's flaws means that you recognize that it's not perfect, and that nothing can be perfect. And if you can accept those flaws as, for whatever your reasoning is for accepting those flaws, and again, it fills the litmus test of not hurting another person, then that can be your truth easily. If you can accept its flaws and that it's going to have some parts where it's not necessarily going to match up, then that can be true, because truth is going to be somewhat relative in that everyone's going to have their own belief about what's true and what's not.
Man, I've got a couple directions that I can take. Like, it's interesting to me to talk about. You're talking about finding the flaws in things, right?
Yep.
Being around it, finding the flaws. And I kind of want to ask, how do you measure that, right? How do you know that you're good at evaluating flaws? How do you know that that's right? But the other thing I want to talk about is the idea of like your personal truth.
Yeah.
Right? Is truth something that can be different for different people?
Yes.
Okay. So if I look at your jacket and I say there are 8 buttons, is it true that's either true universally for both of us, or it's not? Or could it be possible that your truth is that there's a different number of buttons than my truth about your jacket?
Yes, and I will give you one of the philosophies I've heard to give this idea.
Okay.
So that's that one, or actually I've got a couple. One, you could count the buttons on my sleeves. That's now 10 buttons.
But let's say we agree on which buttons we count, right? Could that number be different?
I think the difference is in the language we use. Is in the language that we would use. Like, yes, there are 8 of some object here, but I saw a Vsauce video where he claimed that he basically claimed that language is a fraud, because once you start removing atoms and electrons, when does it stop being whatever it is and start being like ruined? So like if you started, at what point would the button stop being a button and start being a damaged button?
Okay. But does that, in your mind, does that affect the truth about the number of buttons on your code?
I think it affects the truth of the language we use, but I don't think it affects because there are some truths about the physical world that are somewhat undeniable. Like Mount Rainier is a mountain. That's a pretty good truth. There's the object question of how you refer to things, and that can change depending, and each person can believe that their word for it is the true one.
Yeah.
And then there's also some things that make it harder for people to determine physical reality, like blindness or stuff like that. And that doesn't affect the truth of the world, but that can affect the truth of what they experience.
Yes, I get that. But does that change the reality of whether, if I were blind, would that change the reality of whether Mount Rainier was a mountain?
Probably not.
No. Okay. So there are some things, right?
Yes.
We agree that there's some things that are true. So from that point of view, like going back to the whole thing about charity and helping people and like feeling good, helping us to find the truth of things, right? Is feeling good about something like the best way to determine that something is true?
Probably not, but it's the easiest one for everyone to access. It's the simplest. It's probably not the best way, but it's the way that doesn't require like extensive schooling in like methods of thought and how to critically analyze things and all that. It's simple and easy and accessible, and I think that's what makes it the best for people as a whole to use.
Is it possible to use a method that's simple and easy to access and come up with a false belief?
Yes.
Okay. So how can we remove that ambiguity? How can we make it? What's a method we can use that leads to true results more of the time?
Having a diverse community of people that you're talking about it with.
Okay.
Because you've got your results, and now peer review it. Find people that aren't necessarily going to think the same way as you.
Yeah.
Preferably friends, and then talk to them about it. Talk over it with them. Talk over it with your parents. Talk over it with people around you. Talk over it with podcast people you meet at the train station.
There you go.
And that's that would be a way to kind of review your results, and if it's something, and hopefully the people you found are accepting of whatever you believe. But if you can talk about it with friends and with family and with people who aren't going to think the same way as you do, and still come up with your results, then it's much more likely to be true. Right. You can still encounter false truths, but it's a lot smaller of a margin of error, and that way at least other people understand you and understand what you're doing, and so you're less likely to accidentally do something that other people are going to look at you weirdly for.
If the belief were not true, would there be a way to show that it's not true? Like about giving charity. Would there be a way to demonstrate that it's false?
I don't think there'd be a...
Pioneer Square.
There's not a way to universally demonstrate it's false. There's ways that you can convince individual people that it's false, but I don't think there's one universal way to demonstrate it's false, and there's probably a way you can convince almost anyone that it's false, if that's what you want to go about doing. So there are ways that you can do that. It's just going to be unique to each individual or each group of people.
Right. Okay. Cool. I'd love to talk more about this. This is my stop.
Awesome.
Joe, it's been a pleasure.
Yes.
My name is Nick. It's called Conversations on the Coast.
Conversations on the Coast.
And you can find it on YouTube. You've been listening to Conversations on the Coast, a series from Washington State featuring civil conversations using street epistemology to explore what people believe and why. Find out more at streetepistemology.com.